you describe an idea lab as being opposite of echo chambers. So we know what echo chambers are, and you said like there's basically no good term for the opposite of an echo chamber. So what's an idea lab?
Yeah, well, first of all, both of these, we think of an echo chamber as like a group, maybe, or even a place, but it's a culture. It's an intellectual culture,
Sure.
and this goes along with the high rung, low. So high rung and low rung thinking is individual. That's what I was talking about. What's going on in your head, but this is very connected to the social scene around us, and so groups will do high rung and low rung thinking together. Basically it's so an echo chamber to me is a collaborative low rung thinking. It's a culture where it's based around a sacred set of ideas, and it's the coolest thing you can do in an echo chamber culture is talk about how great the sacred ideas are and how bad and evil and stupid and wrong the people are who have the other views. And it's quite boring. It's quite boring. It's very hard to learn, and changing your mind is not cool in an echo chamber culture. It makes you seem wishy-washy. It makes you seem like like you're waffling and you're flip-flopping or whatever. Showing conviction about the sacred ideas in echo chamber culture is awesome. If you're just like, obviously this, it makes you seem smart, while being, humble makes you seem dumb. So now flip all of those things on their heads, and you have the opposite, which is idea lab culture, which is collaborative high rung thinking. It's collaborative truth finding, but it's also just a totally different vibe. It's a place where arguing is a fun thing. It's not, no one's getting offended, and criticizing like the thing everyone believes is actually, it makes you seem like interesting. Like, oh, really? Like, why do you think we're all wrong? And expressing too much conviction makes people lose trust in you. It doesn't make you seem smart. It makes you seem stupid if you don't really know what you're talking about, but you're acting like you do.
I really like this diagram of where on the x-axis is agreement, on the y-axis is decency. That's in an idea lab. In an echo chamber, there's only one axis. It's asshole to non-asshole.
Right.
This is a really important thing to understand about the difference between, you call it decency here, about assholishness and disagreement.
So my college friends, we love to argue, right?
Yeah.
And no one thought anyone was an asshole it was just for sport. Sometimes we'd realize we're not even disagreeing on something, and that would be disappointing. And be like, oh, I think we agree. And it was kind of like sad. It was like, oh, well, there goes the fun. And one of the members of this group she brought her new boyfriend to one of our like hangouts, and there was like a heated debate, just one of our typical things. And afterwards, the next day he said, like, is everything okay? And she was like, what do you mean? And he said, like, after, the fight. And she was like, what fight? And he was like, the fight last night. And she was like, and then she was like, you mean like the arguing? And he was like, yeah. And so that's someone who is not used to Idea Lab culture coming into it, and seeing it is like, this is like, are they still friends? Right. And Idea Lab is nice for the people in them because individuals thrive. You don't want to just conform. It makes you seem boring in an idea, but you want to be yourself. You want to challenge things. You want to have a unique brain. So that's great. And you also have people criticizing your ideas, which makes you smarter. It doesn't always feel good, but you become more correct and smarter. An echo chamber is the opposite, where it's not good for the people in it. Your learning skills atrophy, and I think it's boring. But the thing is, they also have emergent properties. So the emergent property of an Idea Lab is like super intelligence. Just you and me alone, just the two of us. If we're working together on something, but we're being really grown up about it, we're disagreeing, we're not, no one's sensitive about anything. We're going to each find flaws in the other one's arguments that you wouldn't have found on your own. And we're going to have double the epiphanies, right? So it's almost like the two of us together is like as smart as 1.5. It's like 50% smarter than either of us alone, right? So you have this 1.5 intelligent kind of joint being now we've made. Now bring a third person in, fourth person in, right? You see it starts to scale up. This is why science institutions can discover relativity and quantum mechanics and these things that no individual human, was going to come up with without a ton of collaboration, because it's this giant idea lab. So it has an emergent property of superintelligence. An echo chamber is the opposite, where it has the emergent property of stupidity. I mean, it has the emergent property of a bunch of people all, paying fealty to this set of sacred ideas. And so you lose this magical thing about language and humans, which is collaborative intelligence. You lose it. It disappears.
But there is that access of decency, which is really interesting because you kind of painted this picture of you and your friends arguing really harshly. But underlying that is a basic camaraderie, respect. There's all kinds of mechanisms we humans have constructed to communicate, like mutual respect, or maybe communicate that you're here for the Idea Lab version of this.
Totally.
And
It
it's
doesn't. You don't take it. You don't get personal, right? You're not getting personal. You're not. You're not taking things personally. People are respected in an Idea Lab, and ideas are disrespected.
and there's ways to signal that. So, like with friends, you've already done the signaling. You've already established a relationship. The interesting thing is online. I think you have to do some of that work. I mean, to me, the sort of steel manning the other side, or no, having empathy and hearing out, being able to basically repeat the argument the other person is making before you, and showing like respect to that argument. I could see how you could think that before you make a counter argument. There's just a bunch of ways to communicate that you're here not to do kind of, what is it, low rung, shit talking, mockery, derision, but are actually here ultimately to discover the truth in the space of ideas and the tension of those ideas. And I think it's I think that's a skill that we're all learning as a civilization of how to do that kind of communication effectively. Because I think disagreement, as I'm learning on the internet, is actually a really tricky skill, like high effort, high decency disagreement. Like I listened to there's a really good debate podcast, Intelligence
Love
Squared,
it.
and like they can go pretty hard in the paint.
It's a classic Idea Lab.
Exactly, but like, how do we map that to social media? When people like will say. Will say, well, like Lex or anybody, you're not, you hate disagreement. You want to censor disagreement. No, I love Intelligence Squared type of disagreement. That's fun.
You want to reduce assholery.
And for me personally, I don't want to reduce assholery. I kind of like assholery. It's like fun in many ways. But the problem is when the asshole shows up to the party, they make it less fun for the party that's there for the Idea Lab.
Yeah.
And the other people, especially the quiet voices at the back of the room, they leave, and so all you're left was with assholes.
Well, that political Twitter to me is one of those parties. It's a
Yeah.
big party where a few assholes have really sent a lot of the quiet thinkers away.
Yeah.
And so if you think about this graph again, what some place like Twitter, a great way to get followers is to be an asshole with a certain, pumping a certain ideology. You'll get a huge amount of followers. And for those followers, and the followers you're going to get, the people who like, not the people who like you, are probably going to be people who are really thinking with their primitive mind because they're seeing you're being an asshole, but because you agree with them, they love you.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't see any problem with how you're being.
Yeah, they don't see the asshole. This is the fascinating thing.
Because look at the thing on the right. Agreement and decency are the same.
Yeah.
So if you're in that mindset, the bigger the asshole, the better. If you're agreeing with me, you're my man.
Yeah.
I love what you're saying. Yes, show them, right? And the algorithm helps those people. Those people do great on the algorithm.